Hello everyone, welcome to BactoChat, where we talk about the little things. I'm Cassidy.
I'm Anjali.
And I'm Jared.
And today we'll be talking about finding the right major for you. A lot of people come into college thinking they have no idea what they want to major in, or they have some sort of idea what they want to major in, but they're not really sure if they'll like it, especially for kids that come from smaller schools or schools that just don't have robust STEM programs. This is a huge problem. You haven't taken a class in microbiology or immunology, so when you major in it and you come to college, you don't really know what to expect. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I guess we'll just start by sharing each of our stories, and hopefully you can get some really helpful information from our advice. So I guess I'll just start. So I actually came in as a biochem major. I guess that was kind of just based off of I liked biology, I liked anatomy from some science Olympiad competitions that I did in middle school, and I'd taken organic chemistry in high school, which granted, I went to a very small high school. I graduated with less than 50 people, so we didn't really have a whole lot of classes. But I knew I was interested in the medical field. Other than that, I wasn't really sure. So I came in biochem. The nice thing about coming in as biochem was it gives me a lot of flexibility, especially at Penn State, because there is this very large kind of family of majors that you could take. There's biochem, molecular biology, microbiology, and biotechnology. They're all similar, but unique in their own ways. So for the first 2-ish years, I had some flexibility with if I was interested in one over the other and that kind of thing. So the flexibility was really nice there. But then I took chemistry, and I was not a huge fan of chemistry at the college level. In high school, I wasn't really challenged by the chemistry class I was in. We didn't have any honors or AP classes in chemistry, so I just took the only chemistry we had. But then you come to college, and it's very different. It was very, honestly, jarring for me, just because, I hadn't taken a class of this caliber. I'm fresh out of high school. I'm coming to college for the first time. I've never taken a class this difficult. Chemistry was a strong sticking point for me. After 2 semesters of inorganic chemistry, I decided that maybe I could look into something else other than biochem. So that's kind of how I started to realize that I wasn't super interested in this chemistry aspect of biochem. Even though, again, I was only learning inorganic chemistry at this point. I hadn't had any biochem classes. But yeah. So then my second semester in college, I took a microbiology class. It was just intro to microbiology. That's kind of what inspired me to be a micro major. I had no idea that micro was even a major until I took this class and a professor brought it up in class. I also took micro lab, which was the intro to micro lab. I really fell in love with the methods. I had never gotten to work with bacteria before, so I thought it was just super cool to see everything that you can do with little bacteria. So that's just kind of my backstory of how I chose my major, was inspiration from my introductory microbiology course and then distaste for chemistry in general.
Thank you, Cassidy, for sharing that. That really opened my eyes, at least, to the level of chemistry classes that we have at school. I totally agree with you. It's very difficult. I initially came in as a pre-med major, which might be new for some people, especially because it's kind of a small and uncommon major. Unlike Cassidy, I went to a pretty big high school. My graduating class was 800 people, and their STEM was pretty highly emphasized, to say the least, so it felt natural to kind of go in that direction. And I've also wanted to be a physician for as long as I can remember, so it just made sense to apply as a pre-med major. When I got to campus, I instantly knew that I wanted to change out of the pre-med major because it was so limiting. If I graduated with a degree in pre-medicine, it wouldn't really lead to anything. So I stayed in that major for my freshman year. In my sophomore year, I changed to a biology major, which at Penn State is a massive major. It has, I think, 6 or 7 different focuses that students can choose from. There's ecology, there's genetics, there's neurobiology, and there's so many that you can choose from. So that's what I really liked about biology. You can choose from any number of classes to really specialize your major. So I chose the neurobiology major. I think that sounded the most interesting to me. And I got through all of the prereqs and all of the entrance to majors, and I finished those, and I was feeling pretty good about my decision. Now, up until recently, I've been deciding to change my major again to immunology and infectious disease. It's funny because I'll be a junior this year, so it is a little bit late in the game to start thinking about this, but working in a lab and taking classes on more micro level science, I think that has really interested me and something that I would like to pursue later on in the future if I decide that med school is not the path that I want to take. I think immunology opens up a lot of new avenues that I can take, and I'd really like to focus on that going forward. I still really enjoy neuroscience and neurobiology, but for now, I think I'm sticking with immunology. I still have yet to actually confirm that I'm changing my major, but I'm pretty certain that I will in at least the next few months. But yeah, for now, that's my story on changing majors. It was kind of a roller coaster, but I hope I end up where I need to be. So Jared, if you want to go ahead.
Oh, I would love to go ahead. Thank you for sharing, Anjali. We'd love to have you in the immunology and infectious disease department. There's always room for more. But my story is also a little convoluted with a bunch of switching, and that's okay because that kind of happens to everybody. But when I was in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I also went to a really small school, and like the science classes were okay. I knew I was good at science. It was kind of fun, but I kind of thought I would never do it in college because I thought it would be boring. So my dad's a judge, so I decided I would go into law school. But then, as spring rolled around, I applied undecided to Penn State, and I got accepted. And I basically told them, like, I don't really know what I'm going to do yet, so just wait till I get there. And they were like, okay, you can come on down. I decided, talking to one of my teachers who taught sports medicine, she said I should be a radiologist, and we talked about it, and I thought it was pretty cool. So when I got to Penn State orientation, I switched my major from undecided to biology because I was looking at vertebrae physiology, because at the time I thought that you had to have a major that matched what you wanted to do in med school or your career, which isn't exactly true at all. But at the time, that's what I thought. So I went into biology, and like Anjali, it's like a really big major. I thought there was a lot of opportunity there, and the classes were very interesting. That nasty chemistry did get me a little bit. It was a struggle. It must be a struggle for a lot of people. But I made it through that. And in my sophomore year, I took microbiology, the intro level course that Cassidy mentioned, and I took the lab alongside with it. And just like Cassidy, I thought it was really exciting that it was so applicable, that you could do so much, and that you could create life on a plate right there, and you could observe it, and it had real life practical applications. So I thought that was really cool. And I was still thinking about med school. Radiology was kind of going out of my head, and I was looking towards other things. So I came across immunology and infectious disease. And I decided that I would switch my major to that, because even if I didn't make it to med school, I could maybe work for the CDC or work in research or go to grad school. I went and met with an advisor, and she talked me through that, and I still talk to her today about all of the decisions I have to make about my classes. But I switched into immunology, and that is going really great till this day. I'm still considering going to med school to be a doctor of some sort, and I'm thinking about being a doctor of infectious diseases. But alongside that, last year I started volunteering at a place called Center Helps, which is an emotional support hotline, and through my experiences there, I've started to consider psychiatry as an option as well. So that shows that you might have experiences outside of your classes that steer you in a different path. Because I know with the science classes I'm taking now, I can still make it to med school, and I can change my path there even forward. Really, to wrap up my story, is you can change your path whenever, and you never really know what experience will lead you to what you want to do in life. But that's really all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that nice summary there, Jared. You don't have to have everything figured out. I think that's a really big, just general sweeping thing you can say about all of us. We all came in as something not completely different, but different. One thing to take away from that is just get into STEM if that's what you're interested in. For me, I was interested in medical stuff. Well, I guess for all of us, it was like that. I ended up in a program where I had a lot of flexibility in my first 2 years. So everything was basically the same for all of those biochem, molecular bio, microbiome, and even immunology. And then you start to specialize. Something I'm starting to notice even more and more with my bachelor's degree is you specialize for those third and fourth years. And then sometimes it just doesn't feel like you're like getting enough information. So if that's what you're seeing, like that's a good sign. You want to know more about that subject that you're like, oh, I just wish I just knew more. Like, I wish we covered this topic deeper. And that's something you could definitely look into.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think one piece of advice that people older than me have told me is to not stress over choosing a major. If you're going into college as anything in STEM, you're already on the right track. Like, you really can't go wrong with STEM. Don't worry too much about being very nitpicky about which major you want to graduate with, because by the time you are professional enough to enter into the job force, I'm sure there will be so many new jobs that you can't really predict. So as long as you're going through STEM, don't worry about the rest. You will find your way. It will all work out.
Yeah, and the cool thing, at least at Penn State, is a lot of the programs in STEM are similar for at least your first year, if not the first 2 years. There's a lot of credits that overlap, so if you feel like you want to switch and you talk to an advisor, it might work out well for you. We're all rooting for you here.
Yes.
The thing that you just mentioned, Jared, is really important to emphasize the STEM part. Because, I mean, for us, we're all technically science majors, right? But if you're interested in your math class that you take your first year, if you're even like a micro major, that's completely okay. You've taken some classes that you might not need for a math major necessarily, but totally investigate it. You've also got the option to minor in something if you're really interested in it, or double major. But I know in STEM it's very hard to double major if they're like kind of separate. But I mean, there's a lot of flexibility with college, which is huge, especially when you're finding your major. I feel like a lot of people will sit down and say, okay, now it's time to choose your major. Like that's the end all be all. Like that's all you've got. But there's a lot of flexibility. One thing that I was looking into like last year was double majoring in like toxicology or something, which would have added not an insignificant number of classes to my schedule. Something that I just ended up deciding on and realizing was you don't need that certification. Like, you don't need to be like, oh, I need a double major, you know, like if you're interested in toxicology, in my case, you don't need the major. You could just take a couple classes, see if you're interested in it, and then if you're interested in grad school for research or something, maybe apply for a toxicology grad school or something. You don't have to have like a certificate in something to be interested in it and to take classes in it.
Yeah, no, it's good that you bring that up, because even just being proficient or like competent in some field, that's still a really strong point that you can put on your resume. You don't need to have some sort of like certificate or degree that says that you did it. Simply just putting something like that on your resume already makes you a more competitive applicant. I also like that you mentioned the vast amount of minors that Penn State has, because it's so true. We have so many minors. You can really hone in on your skills from your major and focus specifically on like one section of your major to just be more skilled at it and expand your knowledge of it. And I really, really like that at Penn State, just the amount of choice that we have in terms of our education. It's wonderful.
Thanks for the advertisement for Penn State, Anjali.
Yes, of course.
You should be a spokesperson.
Yes. No, what I was going to say about changing your path and such, if you talk to your professors in any of your classes about how they got to where they are right now teaching you, you'd be really surprised to see just how crazy some of their paths have been. And it's very inspiring, honestly, sometimes when you're thinking on those days where like you don't know if you're going to make it or you don't know if you're doing the right thing. If you talk to a professor, they might be able to guide you to something that interests you, or you might learn from them that they took something completely different in undergrad. Now they're doing what they love, teaching. So they can give you really good insights on where to go in life.
Yeah, for sure.
And it is really nerve-wracking at first going up to speak to them, but usually it's rewarding. I'd say like 5% of the time it's not. But you just have to shrug that 5% off, I guess.
Do you want to name drop, Jared?
Nope, that is totally fine. We don't have to shade anybody in the chat today.
Anjali's like over here promoting Penn State, and Jared's gonna just start shading all of the professors.
No,
that he
95% of Penn State is great.
No.
99.9% of Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't like have to be super intimidating to talk to your professor, even if you just like go to office hours and just like be very candid with them. 99% of the time they will be super understanding.
I love these statistics we're pulling out.
Speaking of, I was going to mention, but I forgot. I'm pretty sure my statistics teacher like did not take statistics in undergrad. It was something completely different.
Well, there's a perfect example.
That's insane.
It was something really, like I would give it as an example if I knew, but I can't remember what she said, but it was something really different. Like super not statistics.
Interesting.
And I was like, how?
Well, yeah. For the talking to your professor's point, I definitely like what you said, Jared, and what you said, Anjali. This shouldn't be like, you're not supposed to be scared of your professors. I know you're like young and they seem like gods to you, but they're people too. They had rocky paths and, not everything is clear cut, especially in academia. But they're here for a reason. They want to help you. Definitely use them as a resource. And I think if you just go up to them and say, hey, I want to hear your story, or I just want to know more about X, Y, and Z, their research, their path to their career, what they majored in, how you can choose a major, they would be happy to talk to you about any of this, even if they're not necessarily like advisors for the college. So on the note of advisors, while I'm here, no disrespect to any advisors, but complete respect to advisors. When I say that there's a lot of advisors out there, and generally, at least I know in Penn State's case, you are assigned an advisor coming in, and maybe, you don't, I guess vibe is the word, you're just like not like on the same wavelength as your advisor. I'm not gonna, like shade anyone, but when I came into Penn State, I think I was looking for research as a sophomore, and I finally like scheduled an appointment with my advisor, and I walk in and I'm like, hey, I want to talk about getting involved in research. And my advisor says to me, wait, what? You're not involved in research yet?
Yeah.
Come on, you should have been doing this as a freshman. And it was just like, oh man, like not great, not a great experience. So what I did instead was I started looking to my professors that I really liked, general advisors that you might have in your college or something. They're all really helpful people. Like, as long as you have a good relationship with them, I feel like that's one of the most useful sources of information for your specific college. And then also people that have been in the majors that you're looking at for like 3 or 4 years. So just upperclassmen in general are very helpful. So anyone that might be like a learning assistant or a teaching assistant in your classes, they're also happy to talk with you.
Yeah, I can attest to the fact that upperclassmen are some of the best advisors. Sometimes even better than advisors that actually do this as a job. But that's definitely true. Utilize upperclassmen, utilize TAs, LAs. I know Jared is in LA, and actually, yeah, Cassidy too. You guys can talk about your experience as someone in that role. I don't know if you've had any experiences with students that are notable or anything like that?
That's a good question. I TA for the intro micro lab that I really liked and that like changed my mind completely, and my major. And I've actually had students like come up to me or like email me and tell me that they loved the class so much that they changed their major to micro. And that was like really touching. And I know I always like shouted out the micro major. But I don't think anyone's actually taken me up on any advice necessarily for the classes. Sometimes I just get kind of involved in conversations because I was around and we just talk about professors that were good for certain classes. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's the same for me. I just LA for genetics, and it's the same thing where you'll overhear a conversation and you just kind of join in. But I absolutely love telling people like what classes to take in their majors or like what professors. It's so fun. I don't know. I guess it's just gossipy. It becomes gossipy, but it's
That's
still like
true.
nice to like tell people like which way to go or like help guide them. That's also why it's nice tutoring in general.
Right.
Like helping people find answers.
Okay, well, I guess that's all we've got for this podcast, for today's podcast. So thank you for listening, everybody. If you want more content, you can follow us on Twitter at Kovac_lab, or you can check out our other videos on our YouTube channel, the Kovac Lab. So I guess we'll see you next time on the BactoChat.